Hello, everyone. My name is AJ Kuftic. I'm Principal Technologist with Expedient. Today, I want to thank you all for joining our exclusive partners-only webinar to talk through, as a quarterly update that we're starting to do here on what we're up to and what you can expect from Expedient next. Today, I'm here, AJ Kuftic, Principal Technologist, and John McKenna, our VP of Strategic Initiatives and Partner Alliances, is on with me as well. He'll be helping to answer questions. He'll also be speaking to some of the partner things. I'm here to deliver our cloud messaging. So quick agenda overview. There's about Expedient. We'll go through, kind of our evolution, where we see the multi-cloud industry and trends going, our multi-cloud solution, and then how you can partner with us to help bring multi-cloud to your customers and profit off of all of that. So let's dive into this. We have a lot to talk about today. First, it's the Expedient Evolution. And for a lot of you who have been partners with us for over 5 years, you've seen this growth. But I kind of want to take it back to the beginning. We started in 2001, and today we have 12 data centers in 8 cities. 6 years later, we released our virtual colocation. As virtualization started to take off, we wanted to provide a virtual hosting option to our customers as well. And now that is our enterprise cloud. In 2015, our push button DR was released, and we have the fastest DR in the industry. A number of you have helped sell that with your customers and bring that DR as a service to them and make sure that they have the resiliency in their business, regardless of when disaster strikes. In 2018, we released our enterprise cloud, which is where we took our virtual colocation to the next level and provided a public cloud to enable your businesses and your customers to be able to take on a cloud operating model without all of the refactoring. And in 2020, we released Cloud Native that is powering app modernization. And if you kind of look at this, you can see that we started in 2001 and 6 years later released virtual colocation in 2015. But after 2015, we went from 2015 to 2018, and 2018 to 2020, and it's just accelerating even faster. And today we have a lot more to talk about on what we're doing in 2021. And don't take our word for it on this evolution. We have a nationally recognized enterprise cloud. We were the America's Cloud Partner of the Year for 2018 with VMware. We were Cohesity Service Partner of the Year in 2020. We were part of the MSP 500. We were number 3 on the MSP 501 from Channel Futures. We've been recognized in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. We're doing a lot of things here that gains a lot of recognition, and that is because of what we deliver and how we deliver it for our clients and customers and to our partners. But we've kind of been noodling on this whole cloud space and where we see cloud going. And the facts are kind of interesting here. This is actually a really big year. 2021, it's the 15-year anniversary of AWS EC2. This is more or less the start of the modern era of cloud. There were many hosting companies before, there were many providers before, but AWS releasing EC2 really enabled a completely new level of capability. And since then, digital transformation has been kind of this goal. How are we actually delivering a true transformational world to the business? Because we want to modernize these applications. Companies have been trying this for almost 15 years, just trying to do the digital transformation and modernization of applications. Here's the thing though. Since then, only 16% of companies are 100% cloud. So 15 years, 16%, that's not very fast. And what's interesting about that though, is that line that's going up very, very quickly there is that in the next 2 years, 83% of companies want cloud to be their primary venue for most workloads. So how are we doing 15 years to 16%, but in the next 2 years, we're going to go from 16 to 83%, especially when 85% of organizations report deficits in cloud expertise. So everybody wants to do this. They don't necessarily have the people or the horses to actually be able to pull that off. And the reason is that hyperscale's impact creates inequality. These companies that are born in the cloud have the ability to scale and build faster because they don't have any of the technical debt or any of the technical baggage that we have in the more traditional infrastructure world. If you've been doing IT for 10, 15, 20 years, especially if you're in the bank or the healthcare industries, the banking or healthcare industries, excuse me, these are huge problems that are really difficult to solve because you've been doing IT for a very long time. You have a lot of application, a lot of technical debt built up because that's what powered your business for the last 15 to 10 years. But the problem is that these companies that are born in the cloud can go faster. It's like Uber versus taxis, right? Unless you're in New York or London, like I live in Pittsburgh, I can't just go outside and like hail a cab. They don't exist. They don't just drive up and down the streets all day long. I have to call a cab. I have to schedule a time and tell that cab when to show up and where my address is and tell them maybe even directions on how to get to my house. Because they don't have the technology. They didn't build the technology. Everything was very much built around there's a phone call and a dispatcher versus Uber, where I pull out my phone and I hit a button on my phone and I'm able to get a driver to come to my house to take me where I want to go. They were able to do this. And in doing so, they were able to scale their business and leap past the cab companies almost overnight. So why doesn't everybody do this? Well, because people have tried to do this and they've run into problems. They've run into a number of roadblocks. Specifically, things like the complexity of their applications are wildly underestimated. It's very easy to think, I'm just going to pick this up and move it over here, and it'll be done. But the problem is that that application may not have been written to be not even necessarily cloud native, but it wasn't necessarily written to run in a data center away from the end users. Or it was written to be a very traditional 3-tier architecture that can be expensive in a cloud. And that's largely due to gaps in available skill sets. Not everybody has a whole cloud team or cloud experts on staff to be able to do this right. So you kind of just do what we've done in technology for a lot of years here and just throw stuff at the wall and see what works. And a lot of times this ends up in you spending money in your organization trying to do a cloud transformation that just doesn't work. And then on top of that, even if you're trying to make all of these existing jumps, you're trying to make all of these existing capabilities happen, you still have all these existing operations that you need to make work on the back end, right? My environment, even if I move 2 applications to the cloud, this big giant infrastructure behind me still needs to all be maintained. I still need to maintain my normal business operations. I need to maintain everything that we're doing. And because of that, it becomes really, really hard to focus on how to move our workloads to the cloud. And not only that, but there's the technical debt that sits on top of that. It's very, very heavy. And so it holds back a number of applications from even being able to make the move in the first place. And then what dependencies lie underneath. So there's all these barriers to transformation, but everybody wants to go faster. So how do we accelerate that transformation? Well, why can't we do that? We have a number of competing business priorities. The business, your customer, wants a rock solid infrastructure. They want rock solid applications. They never want them to go down, but they want to go faster. And those two things don't necessarily meet. They usually butt heads a lot. Everybody's very nervous about making the applications move faster, change faster, be more agile, because it requires changes to the applications, which then starts to take away the rock solid application that you have. So you start to figure out new technologies to try and enable that. Those technologies creates complexity. And so as you're trying to figure out all this complexity, you're trying to skill up. I'm learning containers, I'm learning serverless, I'm learning PaaS, I'm learning database as a service, I'm learning all of these things. But then the new technology comes out. The next generation technology comes out. And by that time, wait, you mean, I just learned all the container stuff. What do you mean we're doing serverless? I just learned serverless. What do you mean we're doing holograms? All of these things start to grow and it's very difficult to keep up. And then you start to say, well, I know these technologies, I'm going to apply them to my existing applications. And you find out that your applications and those technologies don't mix. That commodity off-the-shelf piece of software that you have that's critical to your business doesn't fit into Lambda. It just doesn't work that way because it wasn't written that way. And so we're trying to make things fit boxes that they don't fit in. So what we want to do, what we wanted to do at Expedient is we want to help you cloud different. And specifically, we want to help you cloud smarter, safer, and simplified. We want to unlock the cloud operating model that you're looking for to enable that digital transformation, to enable that agility, to enable the business to go faster and meet the needs of their customers where their customers are. So let's dive into this. First, we want to cloud smarter. We want to land in the right cloud the first time. And how we do this is we have a partnership with a company called Cloud Physics, where we can help you sit down and assess the inventory of your clients. So you can say, okay, here's this client that you have. They've got 500 VMs. And inside of those VMs are, there's resources that are needed: CPU, memory, storage, what networks they live on, and even to the point of getting into dependency mapping to see what VMs are talking to what other VMs, so that you can start to figure out where all of your things live and what all needs to migrate together. So if I want to migrate this application is dependent on these 3 services over here, I need to make sure that these services come with me. And by being able to deliver that dependency mapping and all of this environment sizing, you can start to figure out where is the best place for this application. You can also right size your applications so that you can say, hey, it turns out that we have like 60 terabytes of RAM provisioned here, but we're really only using 40 of it. Saving 20 terabytes of RAM can be a huge cost savings to your business. That applies on-prem even before you move. So you can see big benefits on-prem in an enterprise cloud or in a hyperscale cloud. And by doing this, you can find your roadblocks more quickly. You can say, oh, hey, these services that sit together, they need to be able to talk to the internet. Okay, I need to make sure that these have internet access, or the data that this relies on is in this system that lives on-prem. That's going to be egress fees. We need to make sure that we account for that in our cost model. These are big challenges that a lot of companies struggle with when they're making their migration, and these assessments can help you land right the first time. You can also do simple cost comparisons. So I can take this existing inventory and how much you're paying for it today and say, you want to land that in Expedient Enterprise Cloud? Here's the price for that. Here's AWS, here's Azure. And you can line them all up next to each other and make the right financial choice for your business as well. And you can say, oh, this is actually going to cost me a lot more in Azure. Well, oh, I see, because the Azure SQL is a little bit more expensive than what we're paying for SQL Server on-prem. Or you can do things like try to line up all those pricing calculators together. If you go out to AWS or you go out to Azure, they have pricing calculators, and they're very, very confusing. And they have a number of different services in there that are hard to find. Sorry for that, had a sneeze. So we also want to help you cloud safer. We're looking for consistent security policies across clouds. This is actually one of the biggest challenges of utilizing a multi-cloud operating model. By building a safer model around everything, building out all these policies, I can start to protect my workloads no matter where they are, whether they're on-prem, enterprise cloud, or hyperscale cloud. And we can watch for events to make sure that when we see attackers, when we see malicious behavior, that we're catching it before it starts. This builds off of our curated technology stack that we have, so that we've done all of the research, all of the building, all of the integrations, so that your customers can come on and take on these capabilities and move faster. We also have unified visibility via SIEM, so you can do things like security event management. That's actually really expensive and really difficult to build in an on-premises environment. By providing it as a service, customers are able to land in it, see the events, correlate them with problems, with security breaches, and be able to troubleshoot and track down attackers faster. And our push button DR is still the fastest push button DR and is still the fastest disaster recovery in the game. We're doing cloud different, but we're still the same Expedient. All of the enterprise cloud, all of the push button DR, backups as a service, these are all services that we are still continuing to offer, and we will continue to offer them for our customers because we know how successful they can make their IT and cloud journeys. And finally, we want to simplify cloud, and we want to do cloud simplified. We want to provide a single foundation for all clouds so that we can help streamline operations. If you've looked at AWS, you've looked at Azure, you've looked at Google, and even our cloud, we all do things slightly differently. The templates that I have in AWS, those AMIs, my Azure Resource Manager templates, Google Cloud Images, Expedient templates, all 4 of them do the same thing in providing a compute instance, but they're not all the same thing technology-wise. They don't integrate together. They don't have the same sort of words to use, right? So what we want to do is provide a standard foundation so that when you want to do a deployment, regardless of cloud, you're doing the same processes every single time. That standardization leads to efficiencies. It helps your developers so that they're developing the right things each time, and that you're always in compliance with the way that you deploy and your deployment processes. This automation is powered by Terraform and Ansible. And by doing this with this standard tool set, your developers can deliver the things that they want to deliver. They can utilize infrastructure as code. They can put that into their code bases, run that through their pipelines, and get the outcome and the automation that they're looking for that's really hard to deliver with traditional tooling. We can also provide security and visibility around how you're actually utilizing your clouds, specifically around cost optimization. I can bring in all of these cloud accounts. So I can connect to AWS, I can connect to Azure, Google, and Expedient, and pull in reports of where my cloud spend is going. So I can see things like, hey, I'm spending a lot of money in Azure. Why are we doing that? Oh, that's because this project wanted to use Azure data lakes for big data, and we wanted to sit next to them, and it's actually saving us a bunch of money because we're not doing any sort of egress fees. Everything's staying inside of Azure. Great. Or we're spending a lot of money in AWS. Oh, that's because this POC went over budget and we shut that down. So you're able to do all of the reporting and all of the analysis on costs across all of your clouds in a single place versus trying to figure that out in 4 different interfaces. We can help do continuous optimization as well. So let's say you do a deployment to AWS. You do 4 CPU and 16 gigs of RAM. You say, you know what? This is actually over provisioned. We're spending more money than we should on this. Let's drop that down to 2 and 8. In real life, that's actually very hard. You have to go in, detach the EBS volume, destroy that VM, spin up the new one, and reattach the EBS volume. With our tooling, we can do that in an automated fashion and right-size the environment without having someone having to go in and forgetting to detach the EBS volume and deleting it, and now you've lost that data. It's all done in an automated process, and it makes it super simple and easy to do. We can also look at things like compliance and make sure that you're complying to certain regimes, and have a better and more future-proofed platform for you to be able to deliver a cloud operating model to the business of your customers. We also have 24/7 oversight to this, so our operations and delivery teams are here to help your customers move forward on this multi-cloud journey. And we want to be with you each step of the way. The first thing we do is we sit down and help our customers by doing assessments. And this takes an inventory of the existing workloads, and you can utilize this tool as well and help determine the TCO of the current environment and the TCO of the environment that you would be going to. So if your customer is saying, we're really interested in going to AWS, great. Here's what the TCO looks like today versus here's what it looks like in AWS. And you can utilize that data to make better decisions. And then you can take that data and align that to your business objectives. If the business is looking to be maybe more agile, or maybe they're looking to eliminate a data center, you can align that to the business imperatives with data that makes sense and does it right the first time. You can determine the optimal landing zones for cloud, for automation, for data centers, for legacy workloads, for new workloads, and make sure that you're doing it all right the first time. And finally, we can build you the plan to get you there. We can help architect that migration to say, okay, these 10 workloads, we're going to land those over here in EEC because they're legacy environments, but they're very critical to the business and we don't want to touch or refactor them. Great, that can land here. Some of this is going to stay here, like maybe print servers and domain controllers for the end users. And these new applications that you want to deploy, we're going to go land those in Azure because there's a platform as a service that you want to go use. So we can help land everything so that you're utilizing the right cloud for the right workload. Because while there's the 3 big A's, the 4th big A is really accelerating the cloud journey, whether that's on premises, enterprise cloud, or hyperscale cloud. We want to enable that digital transformation. We want to help we want to help your customers go faster. And we do that with a multi-cloud management, security, cost management, data management, and networking layer that enables this across the board, regardless of workload location. But specifically to enterprise cloud, we see a lot of customers who forget that that exists in the middle. And there's a reason that we think that that still fits in this overall world with hyperscale clouds and on-premises, because there's really a great fit involved. If that application exists in the data center today, has low value through refactoring, or interacts with physical systems, hyperscale is not a great place for that. It requires a lot of effort from a hyperscale standpoint to make that work with any of those things. It's not exactly the right fit, and it's going to lead to more trouble down the line than it's worth. Or if your team has a lot of deep VMware skills and not a ton of cloud native skills, this is a way to accelerate the cloud journey and get the cloud operating model that you're looking for from a business standpoint without having to do all of that refactoring. And we know this because we've seen it. We actually worked with a customer of ours, and we were able to sit down with them. That blue line is actually something that they actually did. They were on their way to a hyperscale provider, and they were multiple years into the process, and they hadn't really gotten that far. Right? They were 3-4 years in, and they were only at like 20%, which is still faster than most of the industry, but still not terribly quick. They wanted out of their data center. They wanted to have a cloud operating model. They wanted to be able to stand up, and they wanted to be able to scale up and scale down. And they wanted to be able to do that in a way that reduced operational costs. When they actually found EEC and they started to load their workloads into it, they said, actually, this is what we really wanted the whole time. We wanted to be able to reduce our operational costs, reduce the patching, reduce all the spend, but get to that cloud operating model faster. That allowed them to get to the business value and get to the agility that they wanted, and allowed them to focus their time on the hyperscale cloud applications that they wanted to deliver, but they couldn't because they were constantly stuck doing patching and maintenance of their existing environment. So the enterprise cloud fits in to help accelerate that digital transformation. So how do we actually deliver this? This starts with the Expedient Control. This is our set of universal multi-cloud services that you're going to hear about today, and you're going to continue hearing about for the rest of the year because we have a big 2021 planned. It starts with the workload locations in the middle. We have our client edge, that's on-premises data centers, and then Expedient Enterprise Cloud in the middle and Hyperscale Cloud on the right. So these three are workload locations where you can land things like containers, virtual machines, disaster recovery, microservices across the board, regardless of where your workload location lives. We can meet you there. And then with our multi-cloud infrastructure, we can do things like provide networking through the Equinix Cloud Fabric. So our data centers are connected to all of the hyperscalers via 10 to 100 gig networks, depending on our locations, to be able to get you there faster with low latency connectivity. And even in between our data centers, we have 100 gig networking to make sure that when you do a failover between our data centers with push button DR, that it's the fastest in the industry. And then we can provide data protection and storage on top of that to enable that multi-cloud workload to live wherever it needs to and still have access to all the data that's most critical to its operation. All of this is great, but without a layer of security involved, not getting very far. We are in the process of delivering a new firewall and microsegmentation platform that is going to enable customers to take their security policies with them wherever they go, whether that's on-prem or in a hyperscale cloud or even in our enterprise cloud, to be able to enable that granular microsegmentation and also that macro level firewall for security policies to make sure that you're protected from attackers. And with identity access management, we're able to enable single sign-on across the board, endpoint security with antivirus, and even SIEM to enable event management across your security platforms. Once everything's all secured up, we want to automate on that. And that process standardization that I mentioned earlier plays into here. We want to enable automation. We want things to go faster and be able to deliver things in a much more consistent manner than the way that it currently happens today, where somebody's clicking and they might forget to click a setting. They might forget to click a deployment. This makes it consistent across the board, which allows businesses to scale faster. Along with our container management platform, you've probably heard of our cloud native powered by Rancher. Rancher has the capability to manage Amazon EKS, Azure AKS, and Google GKE, and that enables your container management across the board. So whether you're in a hyperscale cloud, on-prem, or in our data center, we can manage those cloud native workloads and make sure that you have the consistent platform and the consistent management that enables those developers. Speaking of the developers, we want to build a developer-ready infrastructure. We want our clients and your clients to be able to jump forward and be able to take this on and hit the ground running. And that continuous cloud optimization, cost optimization, and monitoring are all watching the environment and making sure that everything is running at its best, at peak performance, and lowest cost to make sure that you have the optimal cloud environment for your customers. So this is our universal multi-cloud services. This is a big deal for our solutions going forward. This allows us to make sure that you get the managed services and the knowledge that you've been getting from us for years, but get it in all the locations that you expect your customers to land in. Because we want to accelerate that cloud journey. We want to be able to handle things like current applications, virtual machines, containers, and workloads, physical workloads on our enterprise cloud, and then have our microservices, variable workloads, big data, AI, machine learning in the places where it makes sense, like a hyperscale cloud. And even when you're on premises, Expedient Control can meet you there and be able to provide a cloud operating model in your customers' data centers. So how do we do this? We start with assessments. By being able to do these cloud assessments, they're powered by Cloud Physics. You get baseline free functionality just by going to our website and signing up. And you can work with Expedient to enable deeper dive on those data collections. So we can see things like, complete right sizing data, being able to land where the workload should be landed, and to be able to meet customers where they are, to understand their inventory and help them on that cloud journey. And if you work with us on that deeper assessment, we can help them with things like lift and shift. Where should they land? Should they land on EEC? Should they land in a hypervisor? Can you use hypervisor-based DR? Where should they land? Do you have legacy workloads? Do you want to deploy new VMs? Do you want to migrate workloads to AWS? How do we want to do that? We can help them all the way along the line, edge to edge. And with Expedient Cost Control, we can help things like get that full cost overview. So this is actually what I was talking about earlier, but a little bit deeper dive here. We can schedule reports so my management layer, my directors at a customer can see what they're spending and where, and analyze those costs in real time. We can also optimize to be able to meet customers where they are and say, hey, you want to deploy a 4 gig of RAM VM? Okay, here's what this costs in EEC. Here's what this costs in Azure. Here's what this costs in AWS. Here's what this costs in Google. You can make the right choice up front. You can also right size the deployments based on use. So if I see something where this VM is over provisioned, I can see how much I'm going to save and kick off the actual remediation to right size it. So it's constantly monitoring for improvements to make sure that you're not overusing it. And when we pair that with our Expedient Enterprise Cloud, we have a number of capabilities from the ground up to provide a cloud that customers are looking for, along with the hyperscale clouds that they're looking for, to be able to provide a great cross-platform, right cloud, right workload model. That's the Expedient Evolution. Again, we started in 2001, made it all the way to 2020. And now we're extending that even further with MultiCloud to provide an end-to-end journey for your customers to help them everywhere along the line. And with that, I will turn it over to John McKenna. He is our VP of Strategic Alliances and Partner Initiatives. And I actually think I got that backwards. I'm really sorry, John.
Well, I'm super offended, and we'll talk about that later. But thanks for going through that, AJ, and thanks to everybody for joining. We're super excited to share the multi-cloud story with you. We just released it here the 1st of March. We were going to do this webinar to relaunch our partner program with all of you in February. We thought, you know what, if we could hold off a month and talk about this, we think that it's important, and it's because it's first of all, before I joined Expedient, I owned my own cloud consulting business for about 7 years, and I would tell you that all of this stuff that, we're seeing as challenges have been going on for a long time. What customers are trying to do to get that visibility across all their platforms and to be able to compare it from a third-party perspective without bias is huge. And, we'll get into a little bit about what the media and what the analysts are saying, because we've spent the last quarter meeting with probably, 40 different analysts and folks just sharing what we're doing, as well as working with our clients to understand what they are challenged with and what they want, and to build this product to that. So there's about 5 more webinars that we're doing this month, so you can go to our website and join any of those if you want more specific information on any of this. What we really wanted to do again is relaunch our partner program, so I'll be talking a little bit about that And I would just tell you too, AJ mentioned, I'm responsible for our partners. I was fortunate to be recognized as a channel chief by CRN this year. And really that's a testament to what we're doing as an organization and the partner program and the investments Expedient's making and the growth that we're seeing from our business and for our partners with what that investment means. And just to kind of give you a feel for it, we did 33% of our business last year, our new revenue through the partner channel. And we're expecting to do at least that much this year. We've got a stretch goal of 50%. And that is our target for next year is 50. So, not only are we growing as an organization, not only are we growing our percentage as a business with the partners, but we're also growing. So that number is really getting a lot bigger from the revenue we're seeing from the channels. So you want to make sure that we are, doing whatever you need to support from us and make that work. So AJ, if you'll go to the next slide. We're talking about this multi-cloud, and again, we've talked about why we think it's important. We know there's a fit, but at the end of the day, we don't want to lose sight of the services that we provide. And you folks can engage us on anything from a broad multi-cloud conversation, but it can start with any of these pieces parts. I just want to remind everybody, we do everything from physical co-location, space, power, and ping in our data centers in any of the facilities across the country. And a lot of times, somebody's just got a need for one co-location cabinet, and that's great. And we'll talk about the value that we add with being able to transition them into other services or to augment that with other things they want to do. But another easy entry point that we see a lot of times with our partner opportunities is DR, business continuity, backup as a service. These are all things that either add a lot of complexity to an IT organization or they're not strategic, like backup, to where people are looking to get that off their plate. And we see managed services like what we're providing, creep up the market to large organizations as they realize that I got to do this digital transformation. I'm not making the progress I need. I need to get some things off my plate to make that happen. And these are services that are quick, easy entries. So those are some of the services we offer that we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of. If you go to the next slide, AJ, this is one of the, these are some of the quotes. I talked about the analysts that we're speaking to. Structure Research, 451 Research, IDC, they're pretty hyped about this. One of the things that Phil with Structure Research said is that he wasn't sure how much he was not aware of how much we'd evolved, and we feel like some of our partners are not aware either. So you may have noticed it's just colo, but clearly we're doing a lot more now. And the thought that this new multi-cloud offering is on point is largely held by a lot of the folks we talked to. And again, I see a clear market opportunity for multi-cloud capabilities. The one-size-fits-all model doesn't work and never has. So we're seeing that consistently as well. Next slide, AJ. We are getting good pickup from this. We just released this the first last week. And so we've gotten Next Platform Information Week, as well as some local business journals picking it up, which is really exciting. So you should be seeing it out there and about. And we're hoping to create some awareness there, which hopefully gets it easier to open the door for you folks as well as you're talking to your clients about us. Next slide, AJ. And then, here's some of the things that we're seeing in the media. Expedient sits in a position where it not only offers services to help organizations make their way into AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and we have some network connects and easy ways to get ExpressRoute and Cloud Connect set up, but it's also a cloud provider itself with the Expedient Enterprise Cloud. It's an alternative to hyperscales, which require organizations to learn new platforms and refactor some of their applications and do so without the services or inherent security they need. And those are things I don't know how much AJ talked about. And he talked about some of the barriers, but that was one of the questions in the chat group is, were these things to consider? Getting it right. There's two sides to that. One is making sure your plan is right so that you build it properly to take advantage of the hyperscale tools and the platforms they offer, but to make sure it's done securely. And then the other side is to make sure that your team is trained and adequately staffed so that they both know how to support the new stuff and also have the bandwidth to support the old stuff that isn't necessarily going anywhere. And as Brian attests there, we're seeing continued great growth with our cloud platform. Next slide, AJ. So what I really wanted to get into next is talking about what are we doing and where the opportunities are for you based on what type of partner you are. So if you hit that next slide, AJ, system integrators, there's a huge opportunity. This is really where we start talking, seeing people doing the application refactoring for their clients, for those applications that are going to recognize the business value that justify that investment of time and capital to refactor an app, but also to take that across all of the legacy infrastructure and determine hey, I'll help you manage what stays on-prem. I'll help you move to the enterprise cloud and continue to do this refactoring to support the digital transformation. So there's huge opportunity there. If you're a master agent or a sub-agent, a local partner, you're looking at, a few percent of whatever AWS lands in AWS for your clients. We're seeing commissions of 5 times that to our partners. And again, when we do an application assessment for our clients, what we're typically seeing is anywhere from 5% of their application groups, sometimes as much as 30%, can move quickly to hyperscale. But what we find is that 70 to 90% of those application groups can move to our cloud immediately. So that was the difference, the 4 times difference slide. That's how it impacts not just our customers, but also your pocketbook as you can recognize all that additional revenue sooner. If you're an ISV, a lot of our software providers, our SaaS provider clients are looking to take advantage of, get me off the capital investment, get me off the managing this so I can focus on redeveloping and updating my software that I sell and the features and the capabilities that come with it, and not having to refactor, but to just move that from what it runs on today to our cloud is a huge win. VARs and MSPs, we see this kind of blending, but from VARs that have traditionally sold hardware and software, being able to straddle that transition as your clients look to move to the cloud, but also to differentiate yourself from what your competitors are offering with hyperscale, with a complement that is the enterprise side to work with all those core applications that run their business. And the other side of that is that there's a lot of talk about VMC on AWS and Azure and all the new releases they're making. When you start looking at business continuity, the cost of us doing this instead of VMC, we're seeing customers anywhere recognize 40 to 60% savings over VMware's offering with VMC. And then, again, the MSPs, and I think John was asking some questions here about, what tools are we using? What we're looking for our partners to do and having a lot of success with is layering their services on top of our cloud. So again, having a consistent stack underneath really helps you accelerate your delivery of your services to your clients, as well as to have a consistent experience and outcome for your clients. That's huge. Next slide, AJ. This is just kind of a breakdown of, we do have 3 different categories of partners with the Premier, Preferred, and Standard. A couple things to point out here is that, everybody gets registered leads and full support from our sales and engineering teams when you do so. And then this is some of the investment stuff that we've added here as far as providing access to our AI tools, which allows us to heat map where their opportunities are with specific clients and use everybody's time more effectively, as well as some joint marketing and even giving you access to our sales development team to set leads and meetings for us together. Next slide, AJ. And here's some of the things that we have seen as far as with our most successful partners. Employee count and annual revenue, that's really more dependent on the partner. What we see is that if they're focused in the same geographies as we are, as well as with the same vertical markets, which we have a lot of success in: financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, those are accelerators. The more engineers that our partners have as far as being more technical than just sales oriented, we find that they have a lot of success as well. Having current cloud practice and goals and objectives around managed services themselves, we find that our partners are more in those conversations, and we have a good acceleration path with them as well. And really, if we're lined up on the same stuff, we're a heavy Dell VMware shop. We use Zerto and Cohesity for our business continuity. So if you're already selling that stuff, it's a pretty nice fit. And again, what we've seen is that, and I'll talk to this in a future slide. If you go to the next one, AJ, sales objectives for managed services and organizational objectives. What we find is when we're working with the partners, the ownership and the leadership sees the ability to recognize that recurring revenue, because we're paying you a percentage of that agreement for the life of it, even when it renews after a 36-month term or whatever term they pick. So, leaders and owners are looking at that and saying, hey, for me to consistently see this gross profit landing every day, it helps my cash flow. That's very attractive. Sometimes the salespeople are looking at it from, well, I want to see that revenue recognized up front. So with a combination of having objectives for managed services as well as paying a greater percentage, we see partners doing things like recognizing that gross profit up front so that people do get paid near term. But we've got a number of things that we can work with on you as far as giving you some insight of what we've seen and understanding what you're trying to accomplish with both your comp plans as well as your revenue and growth objectives around managed services and cloud. Next slide, AJ. And this is just kind of an example, with one of our partners, which is not a huge partner, but we made an agreement to invest. We saw the benefits of working together. They recognized where we fit into their entire cloud play, which included hyperscale, VMC, as well as private cloud on-prem. And once they figured out where we fit and we built our go-to-market strategy and got everybody trained up, what we created was a pipeline with about 63 qualified ops with 7 deals in the first year. Inside of the first year, worth over $18 million in revenue. So, our pipeline continues to grow. We've also provided 18 referrals back to them, some of them which we weren't even involved with, but we knew what their skill sets were and how they could serve their clients. And we knew that making a recommendation intro to them would help both the customer we were talking to as well as them. So that's big because it is a two-way street with us. Next slide, AJ. And just to kind of give you an idea, I talked about this earlier. We're looking for our clients to layer services on top of our platform. The other thing is, we're not we don't do professional services. Our managed services are capped at that infrastructure layer. And what our clients are looking for is help around application monetization, strategy, getting ServiceNow implemented and tied into everything they do. Virtual desktop, we've seen a huge push as far as since the pandemic started. And we do not want to be supporting those individual clients. We know that you make money. A lot of you make money doing that. But all these things are things that our customers are looking for that if we partner together, it helps us provide a more robust solution. And those are just some examples of the companies that we're working with our partners across the country. Next slide, AJ. And here's some of those benefits. I showed you that chart as far as the differences, but we do provide dedicated partner account executives and solution architects for our partners. For those that we can align with, we do have some pretty aggressive spiff programs with multiple times payout on the monthly recurring revenue that is won for deals of a certain size. So happy to talk to you about how we can do that to drive alignment. And we do. This AI tool that I've talked about, what we do with our partners is if you'll supply us just with your client list and your prospect list, and you don't have to provide names or emails or contacts, it's just the name and the URL. We can run through some of our AI tools and we can heat map and determine what clients on that list have the highest intent of buying cloud with the services we provide from somebody like us. So we know that they're in the market. And then we can also go and drill into the granularity of what they're already looking at. So, we don't have, if you have 20 accounts, we're not necessarily going to say, let's set up 20 meetings, but hey, let's focus on these 5 that show high intent and something that's wheelhouse for us and, use everybody's time better. Talked about the lead engine. And then we've also developed a pretty robust pipeline of training for both salespeople and engineers, which really helps accelerate our engagement with our partners and their clients. Next slide, AJ. And when we do engage, one of the things we build is an acceleration program, which includes a dedicated program manager to lead that. We sit down and we do put together goals for both what we expect to accomplish so that we can determine that it's worth everybody's time to invest. And then we execute that enablement. So again, it starts with that account mapping. It starts with the joint selling. What we find is, we have to put the programmatic stuff in place to support it. But what we really focus on is frontline field sellers and engineers finding opportunities to close, recognize revenue, and then spread from there. And then next slide, AJ. So that's what we wanted to really cover. And AJ, you can just hop to the next one. This is what we are finding as far as what leads to success. The first step is just to engage. We've got an incentive for everybody. We're going to do, I think it's $100 gift cards for the first 5 partners at scheduled meetings with our team to discuss how we might work together or opportunities that you have in mind that you want to work together. And then again, that heat mapping using that AI tool so we can figure out, where we might work together. And then it's, getting those trainings going. We've got a solution playbook that we're building that really helps you understand, how we can fit into the market. We want to work with you to make sure how we fit into your go-to-market strategy. And then again, what it leads to is, healthy commissions. We have the opportunity to pay, spiffs and one-time bonuses, but that recurring income builds when we do this stuff together. And I know we wanted to leave some time here for Q&A, so I've just got a couple slides left. AJ, if you'll hit the next one. This gets into a little bit more detail of what we're building with our technical and our marketing teams. This is a digital and ebook, and the whole idea is to connect you, make it easy for you to find out what you need, and come up with handling field objections, what industry information is telling us, just to make sure that you're more involved in what we need to do to support those clients of ours and create better outcomes for everybody. And then the last slide, as I talked about it earlier, we wanted to relaunch our partner program with all of you. We also have established a cadence of, we want to do these webinars. We're going to do them on a quarterly basis. Here's the dates for them. We'll be covering new product releases. We're also open to your feedback as far as what you're seeing and what you'd like to have covered. And then we'll be updating any spiffs and promotions and whatnot that we have for that quarter, as well as new training and campaigns and whatnot. So, really excited to, get some stuff going. So we've got an email address, I think, here on the next slide. If you just email partnerteams@expedient.com, that'll get thrown into our pool, so we make sure we have the right partner team, as well as either the local or enterprise sales team to engage with you, so we can get those opportunities and potential relationships going. So, thank you for everybody who already registered and joined. You got an Uber Eats gift card for the first 25. So I think most of the people are covered on that. And again, really excited to have some conversations about how we might work together. So with that, AJ, I'll turn it back to you. I think we got some questions there we want to answer.
We've got a couple. I just want to thank the fine people who were trimming some trees right outside my house while you were talking, John, for just finishing up now. So thank you to tree people outside my house. It was about to be very loud, and then it wasn't. There were a number of questions around security tools. So SIM and endpoint security. We've partnered with Elastic. Elastic is a really great company that you may have heard of them from Elasticsearch or the Elk Stack. They now have their Elastic endpoint security powered by Endgame. It was an acquisition they made last year. So we were using them for antivirus. It does a really great job with signature-based antivirus, but also does behavioral-based security. So if I copy, say, an executable from one server to another, no, don't do that. I've not seen you do that before, and I'm going to block you from doing it. So it provides more than just the sheer, you've downloaded this piece of malware and we know what this code is. It does things like protect against behaviors internally as well. And then from a SIM standpoint, we're using Elastic SIM to be able to provide that event correlation. It's actually really cool. We're doing a lot more with Elastic because of its multi-cloud capability. So again, one of the other questions in there, all of these were from one person. Basically, the answer is Elastic. But Elastic can do things like reach out to AWS and Azure and Google and pull in those logs. It can reach into our environment and pull those logs in, and then we can correlate those against in-guest agent. It's powering our performance management and monitoring and our antivirus. So we're able to pull all of this data together to give you a really comprehensive observability of your environment and less monitoring. So Elastic is the answer to all of those questions that you had. But that's really where the tool set comes in. And again, this is that curated stack. You could do this on-prem. Customers can do this on-prem. But when they do it, it costs a lot in licensing, especially for the SMBs to mid-market. It's very, very expensive. And not only is the licensing very expensive, but the hardware to support all of it is expensive as well. So by being able to provide that as a service, you get an enterprise scale from Expedient without the enterprise price tag. That gives us the ability to reach deeper into the markets and give capabilities to smaller environments that they wouldn't have had before. There was actually a comment that I wanted to bring up here where someone said many clients that are not, quote, equipped, end quote, to migrate their infrastructure and applications to a hyperscaler typically rely on Azure or AWS support to help set up the environment and migrate. That said, almost always the application doesn't act the way it did on premises, and this is where the gap is. The back end and run costs to get the application to act the way it did prior to hyperscale are hidden. And so for us, we want to help right-size those platforms and meet that application in a cloud. Sometimes those applications are a better fit on our cloud because we have a VMware platform that is powering the same infrastructure that you're powering on-prem, but you're able to consume it as a service from us. So you're able to get all of that power and all of that consistency that you expect. But if you want to go to a hyperscaler, that's where we can do assessments and align that up to make sure that you're not going out to AWS and finding out, oh, hey, this application doesn't work very well out there. But we knew that already, and we still did the move anyways because we were told we had to go to a cloud. We're able to make the right choice up front and drive forward off of that.
Yeah, and that was AJ. I'm glad you brought that up because that was another question that was asked, and I can't remember if it was public view or not. But do we have visibility across other providers? And the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I would see with assessments, especially that are sponsored by vendors. A lot of times the hyperscale is looked at from the application group as far as what they can take advantage of from platform and whatnot. And a lot of times what's not looked at as closely as the network and the security aspect. And so one of the things that comes with our assessment tool is you'll actually get a map of what systems and pieces of gear are talking to what. And you can blow that out and see what those interdependencies are. And that helps address both latency, but also just the hyperscale charges egress and ingress fees. And so if you've got something that's really heavy communicating back to something that's not going to move, that needs to be budgeted. But all that stuff needs to be accounted for as far as I'm going to be breaking things up and I have to maintain that security across all of it. So our tools give you insight to that, and we're using third-party stuff. AJ showed slide 31, which shows by name and OEM the different pieces that make up everything. We call ourselves a curator of technology. So this is stuff that they can be using or already using or familiar with, and it's providing that data from an objective third-party perspective. We're actually curating it and then delivering it to you, delivering our client to give us those insights so that we can make the best decisions for the best outcomes.
I think the interesting part about this is that if you were to ask an infrastructure person today, you've got unlimited dollars, you've got everything you could possibly want, you're in full charge of building a completely new infrastructure from the ground up, this is probably what they would build. Now, I'm sure that there are a number of people who would say, oh, we'll go do everything in a hyperscaler. But if you have to maintain your existing applications, but you get to migrate them to a completely greenfield environment, this is probably what they would build. These are best of breed technologies. This is exactly what you would want to deploy to have a really consistent, really powerful infrastructure to be able to run those applications. So it's still vSphere on the bottom, so your VMs move right over, no problem. You're utilizing vSAN for storage on an all-flash, fully encrypted platform. So when you're landing there, you have all of those same capabilities moving forward. NSX for network security, Illumio for microsegmentation, vCloud Director for our multi-tenancy. Really the only piece in there that you probably wouldn't deploy yourself is Cloud Director because that's not an on-prem technology, that's a service provider technology. But that Cloud Director actually enables that REST API to be able to manage the entire infrastructure end-to-end from your developer standpoint, along with Terraform and Ansible. So this is actually an end-to-end stack that provides a ton of power without all of the maintenance and building and research and time and design. It's all done for your customers so they can come in, latch on, and immediately start to take advantage of these technologies. We still have a couple more minutes for questions. So if you have any, please send them our way, put them in the chat. We are absolutely here to answer your questions. We want to make sure that our partners are successful. We want to be able to provide you guys with the best capabilities possible so that you can be successful with your customers through your sales motions as well. There was one other question in here that I saw. Where was it? What are some of the challenges you encounter using cloud-native technologies when refactoring legacy applications and preparing them for the cloud? it's a legacy application and people have expectations. And if it's a legacy application that's still hanging around, it's hanging around for a reason. It is doing its job. It is something that the business deeply relies upon. They have an expectation of how it performs and an expectation of how it works. So when you start to refactor it, start to make changes to it. When you make changes to those applications, people generally are afraid of change. And so they get very nervous when the application doesn't look the same. It doesn't work the same. There's a lot of retraining that has to happen to try and make it match what it was before. And there's a lot of, if it's not broke, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's sort of what happens here. But I think the challenge is when the back end of the application is known to be not great, or is known that it's not going to scale or meet the needs of the business going forward, it's not broken yet. So there's a lot of convincing that has to be done in terms of a barrier on refactoring. There's also legacy applications where the code is quite old. And the people who wrote that code originally are no longer with the organization. They retired, they left, they went somewhere else. And so maybe these little pieces of the code that no one knows about because no one's touched that code in 10 years finally comes back to bite you. And so it ends up with the business saying, you know, this is really risky. We don't want to mess with this application. Let's just go back to what it was and we'll fix it and band-aid it forever until we can't anymore. And that's not a great way to go about this. I think there needs to be a, from a top down, there needs to be a initiative to say, we are going to fix this application. We are going to modernize this application. We know there are going to be bumps. We know there are going to be problems. This is not going to be easy or fun, but it is something that we must do now before it's too late and everything passes us by because we can't maintain these technologies anymore. Looking at you, pretty much every company with a mainframe, right? Once you get to a point, the technologies just aren't supportable by most of your staff, and it's very, very expensive to continue supporting those. You need to get off of them before you get to that point, and having that set in stone and push from an initiative standpoint is incredibly important. I do want to remind everybody for the first 25 people who registered, you'll receive an Uber Eats gift card. Peggy will be reaching out to you with those. And again, the first 5 partners who book and attend an appointment will receive a $100 gift card of your choice. So again, reach out, book those appointments. Let's sit down and let's figure out how we can work together to provide that cloud journey, that cloud transformation for your customers. I want to thank everybody for joining us. John, I think the next one of these is in June 15th.
That's right.
So please join us in June. You'll get a ton of emails. You'll get a ton of invites about it. I'll be back. John will be back to tell you all about what we've been working on for the last 3 months, new product releases, new promotions, new spiffs, and additional training. We want to make sure that we can partner together to be successful. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and let's move forward. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.